And we are live. Here we are, guys. Welcome. It is Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. What time is it? Not 9 o'clock. Gosh, 9 o'clock Eastern and 6 o'clock Pacific. And I am here with Maggie Babylon. And we are talking this week specifically about Chapter 3, Very Best Bad Idea. That's where it kicks off. We won't stay on Chapter 3 long. Chapter 3 doesn't mention Thomas Jefferson at all, and we're going to need to fix that. Because we tend to go off on Thomas Jefferson tangents. But yeah, we're starting off with
where he could easily be put in.
Oh no, there's several different easy avenues for Thomas Jefferson. So chapter 3, just kicking off. So we're talking about my book, The Very Best Bad Idea. Maggie is a history buff and way smarter than me. And the whole point of this book was that it was wrong at its inception, and I wanted help tearing it apart. So after publishing it, I asked Maggie to come on and just help me rip it up. So we're ripping up chapter 3 this week, which is called Extra Bacon, Hold the Grease. We're talking about how Francis Bacon revolutionized the Western field of thought that had been based on assumptions before that, and he then invented empirical data and the scientific method, as it were. And with that, I'll kick it over to you. Like, what did you think of chapter 3?
Okay, there was some certain parts that I really loved.
Okay.
So you talk about on page 75, the subtitle thingy is "Wrong is Good."
Yes, wrong is good.
And then on page 79, you have this paragraph that I'm going to read aloud. Much like the Greeks said, work under the assumptions you have. But much like Bacon asserted, make sure it's something you know for you, not because you were told. And later, when you find out the thing you know is wrong, make like Newton and keep trying to turn lead into gold.
Yes.
Okay, so I loved this whole line of thought here about wrong being good.
Yep.
And turning lead into gold, obviously, which is a thing that isn't going to happen, because I guess maybe we should back up and talk about
let's explain that really fast, because that's not necessarily something everyone knows. The big thing that's important to know that I talk about in the book and that I learned when writing the book is that Isaac Newton actually wrote over 1 million words in his life about alchemy. We think of him as the guy, the 3 laws of thermodynamics, and we think of him as the guy who, discovered gravity, and we think about the guy who, invented calculus or did all these crazy things. More than any of that, he spent almost his entire career trying to find the philosopher's stone. He was trying to turn lead into gold, and he was trying to find eternal life. He wrote over 1 million words. It was his life's work. And the only reason we don't know that is because Cambridge suppressed those writings because they didn't want people to think of him as insane. These only started coming to light in the 1970s and later as some of these writings that had been suppressed started leaking out, like his own recipes for Sophic mercury and other key elements to the philosopher's stone, which, by the way, was said to be a liquid. All of that being said is that we remember Isaac Newton for all these positive things when he was wrong just as much as he was right, but we don't talk about that. And that is kind of the premise here, is that Isaac Newton, even though he was mocked at the time for it, and even though nowadays we suppress it to not talk about it, we talk about his accomplishments and we pretend like he was this amazingly, perfectly brilliant person. No, he was insane. He was one of my friends who's a modern scientist basically says he was an anti-vaxxer. Every scientific knowledge pointed to it not being true, but he wouldn't stop looking for it because he believed in it so much. Wrong is good. Hurting people's not good. But I'm not trying to, believing in something and chasing your passions, something that when you see the possibilities, wrong is good. Now that that's the baseline of turning lead into gold, and that where that sentence came from. But continue your thought now about, because you're saying that passage of, you said page 79. Yeah. When you know better, do better, and when you figure out, keep trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. So something that stood out to me about this, on page 75, wrong is good. And you go into Einstein has been wrong. Stephen Hawking has been wrong. We've all been wrong. Right. Isaac Newton was hilariously wrong. The thing is that I think that it's kind of easy to say wrong is good. It's true. Being wrong is good. But we also have to remember that the feeling of being right is intoxicating. Absolutely. So this is one of the reasons we can't let go of things that are right or wrong that we want to believe are right, that we hold to them so firmly. And it's
Absolutely.
usually those things that we can't see. It's things that it's easy for us to sit here and be like, wow, what an idiot. Philosopher's Stone, alchemy, okay.
Right.
But there's like a lot more to it, like historically speaking, for his time. I mean, I understand for his time, he was even like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But how many people have been cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs in their time and turned out to be right? So is it really outlandish for someone like Isaac Newton to be like, yeah, you think I'm crazy now, just you wait until science comes down on my side.
Right. Right.
And that's
I mean,
intoxicating.
And I mean, and this is where it gets into, I don't want to go down crazy the religious rabbit hole, but I've been watching a lot of everything from TikToks and other YouTubers talking about how, like, science is a religion, which it's not. And and the whole concept of there are people that believe in science. The guy that said the original person that said that washing hands is good and we should start doing it was basically laughed out of the medical field. The first person who said that it was sugar making us fat and not fat and other things was like largely discredited. And so, like, and it came around, but he was saying something so radical to the thinking, both washing hands and sugar bad. There are absolute people that saw through the trees and were absolutely discredited. What if Isaac Newton had ended up being right? He wasn't. I am not saying that there's a such thing as a philosopher's stone. Not at all my point here. I'm just saying that there are a lot of people who have clung to the mockery and ended up coming through it on the other side correct.
Yeah. So I think that that's something, though, that we can oftentimes think. I think we see this with anti-vaxxers. We see this with QAnon. This belief that, like, well, you mock me now, but tomorrow you
will prove me right.
Yeah. So I think that it's so easy for us, like I said, to mock Isaac Newton, to mock anti-vaxxers, to mock QAnon. But in all honesty, we fall into this trap ourselves.
Absolutely.
We absolutely fall into this trap ourselves. Like it's just, maybe we do it at less of an extreme level, but we do. There's so many things that we believe whole hog that aren't true.
My friend 1 at 14 just told us that the Philosopher's Stone does exist. Hermione figured it out.
So okay.
Yeah, we put that to bed.
Love Mario.
Yeah. Absolutely. We cling to ideas. It's interesting how much we cling to ideas that we hate. And we are averse to things that scare us, even to the point of we reject things that are kind of self-evidently true because they don't jive with something we were taught. Like, one of the things that I like to tell all of my clients is I say, hey, look, the first lie always wins. Your brain has a number of set parking spaces. If someone gets to an empty parking space and gives it a piece of information, no matter how insane that piece of information is, the world was created in 7 days out of dust, and that's it. No matter how logical the thing that comes to that parking space later is, like, actually, that's not true. You will fight over the parking space like a crowded Saturday afternoon at a grocery store on payday. Like, you will be angry for that parking space. Like, no, there's already a car there. Like, but right, that's not correct. It doesn't fit there. This isn't the right piece of information. And we will defend what we believe just to an insane level, even if there's nothing to support it. And even if it is self-evidently wrong, we will go down the rabbit hole to protect what we have rather than get something that we don't. And it plays into a lot of what Francis Bacon was trying to do. Like, let's throw away everything. Let's not cherry pick. Let's just throw it all away and just start over. Because you're right. We're holding on to little bits and scraps. Let's just say nothing is sacred. Throw it all away. And it was pretty radical for the time.
It's really, honestly, the most dangerous thing is when you're certain you're right.
Absolutely. Nothing in military speak, in basic training, they used to tell us, like, nothing is more terrifying than a true believer. He has nothing to lose. Like, nothing, like, a soldier is just a soldier, but nothing is more terrifying than a true believer.
Well, that's exactly why we have to give soldiers something to fight for, but that comes into like a whole other thing about
that's a whole different thing.
Humanizing and rhetoric. And yeah, so I have an example of this. Overpopulation.
Okay.
Is a great example. Overpopulation was something that was absolutely true. Absolutely true. Absolutely going to happen since, I mean, we've actually been talking about it for centuries, but in the 1970s, there was a push. And if you ask people today, oh, would you ever have 6 kids? One of the first things they'll say, besides maybe I don't want kids or whatever, is it's bad for the environment.
Right.
Except overpopulation isn't a thing.
Defend your spot. Defend that. Because
okay.
I am making absolutely no statements here because I don't have the research on this one other than I know people that would go to the mat over this. So I'm just...
Yes, exactly. That's exactly my point. Because when I've read articles about this, when I've read interviews with scientists, including the scientist who was really firmly about overpopulation, when I read articles about this, the comment sections are full of people saying, no, it's a thing. It's a thing. And I'm talking comment sections in like the New York Times, like big name stuff, not like a QAnon site.
Right.
I'm talking liberal sites, left leaning, where a scientist or 2 or 3 are saying we got it wrong. Actually, we're headed towards the opposite. Then you get people still just unwilling to give up that parking space.
So look, I've seen Infinity War and Endgame, and Thanos really did assure us that there's just too many people. Really?
Yeah.
I thought I got a response out of that. Anyway, so by the way, one up, both Maggie and I have 5 kids. He's making comments like 6 kids is crazy. Yeah. So we both have 5. Like,
yeah.
So, interesting. I will say though, the number of times, and again, I have not read the studies. I have no dog in that fight. Anything I say would just be like, no, I heard once from a thing, and I'm not going to be that guy.
Well, let me just say real quick, but you still were like, wait a second, but no, right?
Yeah, like my initial reaction, it's still to this moment, is like, no, I'm pretty sure I've read about this. I've read about it from places that I trust. The first lie always wins, and I'm damn it, I'm gonna have to Google this later.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we can definitely talk about it because it's actually something I find really interesting.
Yeah, no, next week I'm going to have studied this and either to agree with you or to just spar about it, because that's a fascinating take. Because I will also say, and yes, I am referring to, everything from Huffington Post to TikTok to Fox News. I mean, like, I troll around. I said troll, not troll. I troll around the comment sections of a lot of publications, and I will see. Actually, here's a perfect one. I saw a molecular biologist and Hank Green go back and forth on TikTok several times on whether or not a virus is alive. And I think most people put a lot of faith in Hank Green's just sheer veracity of everything he says. And Hank Green's like, of course virus is alive. And this molecular biologist was like, except that they're not. And they were going back and forth, and and again, I have heard both of them. I determined this to be outside of my pay grade. I'm not smart enough to even listen to this conversation, let alone have an opinion. And whether or not they're alive doesn't affect me kind of much at all. But my point in that is to say that, like, these are 2 unbelievably educated, unbelievably qualified people, and even they don't necessarily see eye to eye, which actually gets to the last part of the chapter. Wow, we flew through that chapter. It's 13 minutes. The last chapter. I mean, what's his name? Daniel Patrick Moynihan. Does that sound right? Did I get that right? His name is. What
am I looking for?
Yes, Daniel Patrick Moynihan. Everyone is entitled to his own opinions, but not his own facts. That's a very famous quote. We've all heard it a lot of times. Everyone is entitled to his own opinion, but not his own facts. And I mean this from the bottom of my skeptical, cynical heart. Define facts. And people are like, well, obviously, facts are things that are true. Right, but it used to be the 3 laws, Isaac Newton's laws, were facts, except they've all been debunked. Not one of them is still a scientific law. Not one. Much of the theory of relativity, you're like, well, that's a theory. Theories of relativity, these things that are scientific, the theory of evolution, which I am not in any way arguing against, still has lots of things that are developed and tweaked and changed and re-theorized and developed on. I'm saying that as a good thing. Define fact, because what we know today and what we know tomorrow are not always the same thing. And I don't mean believe, I mean know. Things that we believe, things that we make decisions, economic, scientific, developmental, innovative decisions based on these facts. We find out later that they were kind of true sometimes, but they weren't all the time true. So it's just an interesting define fact, because I don't know that I know what one of those is.
Right. And you also have to define what you're claiming as factual.
Right.
So Cassidy Nicole said the biggest reason people don't have kids, aside from just not wanting to be parents, is because it's expensive. So, okay, let's break that apart. How do we know that that's the biggest reason people don't want to have kids? And this isn't me saying that she's wrong. I'm just putting this out there. How do we know that that's why people aren't wanting to have kids? How do we know it's expensive? Define expensive. How much money do you need to raise a child?
Too much.
Etc. Like what are the facts based on all of these different things? It's really difficult to look at a statement like that and say fact.
Sure. Well, and here, she did follow up. Let me pull up her second one. She said, a society should be able to provide for young parents who want to have lots of children to reflect flourishing. And again, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I know people that would go to the mat disagreeing with that, though. There's a lot of reasons that people, I agree that I know a lot of people that didn't have kids because of money. I know a lot of people who didn't have kids. I have a dear friend who didn't have kids because she just does not like them. Like, had no desire to have kids. I have another friend that has 6 and wants more and doesn't think she'll be able to have more and is really upset about that. And that's just, I don't judge either. It takes all kinds. I had 5. We meant to have 3. Like, twins change things quickly.
Oh, don't I know it?
Yeah. I love how both of our youngest are twins. It's just from 3 to 5 real fast. So Colin says, evolution was taught to me as not a theory in school, which, again, it's funny because, like, I have been told evolution is an absolute scientific fact demonstrated over and over. I mean, it is a theory. It's absolutely the theory of evolution because no one's willing to make it a law because you can't for a few reasons. But this is exactly what I mean is we've reached a point in science that no one will put law on anything. We'll just leave them as theorems forever because it's too dangerous to put law next to something, because the one thing that we know, as Rob Pullitz, the one thing we know is that we know nothing. The one thing we know is that change is the only constant, that our world is developing. So what that does is it becomes really, really fascinating and problematic at now of like, these are the facts. Are they, or are those your understanding of the situation? Are you willing to hear a different understanding or not?
Right. Well, and also evolution. I mean, which evolution are we talking about here?
You're going to have to go into detail what you mean by that.
Well, it's really interesting to me because evolution, usually when we talk about evolution, we're talking about men are from monkeys. You know what I mean? Which, by the way,
biology. Yeah. The general Darwinism, evolutionary biology.
Right. Which I'm not actually mocking or anything. I'm not one of those people, but not one of those. But there's, as young earthers will argue, there's different forms of evolution.
Right. There's intelligent design and there's a lot.
Well, yeah, but there's also, like, what I mean is it's not just man evolving from ape, just to put it really simply.
Okay.
There's other ways that we evolve as a species and that other species evolve. Do you see what I'm saying here? Like, there's not just when we talk about evolution, we think about the image that we see of like the ape and the walking into a man and all of that stuff. But evolution isn't just that. Like, that's what we think of as evolution. But we are not the only species that evolves.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. Everything evolves. Right.
Right. So what I'm saying is, I mean, even like a virus will evolve, right? Like, right. What I'm saying is that some people can reject the idea of that we evolved from apes or monkeys or whatever they want to say and still agree with evolution.
I want to read this real quick. What is it? So Cassie says, what separates a mystic from a fundamentalist is that a mystic can sit with with uncertainty and accept the unknowable nature of the divine. I'm Catholic, so I'm speaking from that perspective. Absolute certainty is not granted to humanity, and when people think it is granted to them, horrible things happen. Okay, first off, I could not agree with that more. Like, nothing is, again, back to my whole thing, is nothing is more dangerous than a true believer. Nothing is more dangerous than someone who clings to the fragments of what they have with complete disregard for what they don't have and just say, all I know is that this is true. That has almost never equaled anything good in history.
Regardless of the belief, by the way. It's not just religious belief, it's, political, it's social, it's regardless of belief. When you absolutely know for a fact that you are right and everyone else is wrong and you must push this, let's not do that. Let's not do that.
Which is kind of what I meant by my quoting Daniel Patrick Moynihan, is like, I am by no means not saying there isn't truth in the world. Of course there is. But people do this when this quote is used, like, hey, you're entitled to your own opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. I completely agree. As long as we agree that you don't have a single fact, you're not using a single fact. You're using your opinion and labeling fact on it. You're just, the number of times I've seen two different people use the exact same statistic equally incorrectly to both prove their stupid point and call it a fact. Like, it's as a PR person, there's nothing I love more than numbers, because I can make them say anything I want.
There's statistics and damn statistics, that quote that I can't remember.
Like, and so
lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Lies, damn lies, and statistics. Exactly. I mean, it's amazing to me the ferocity that people will hold on to a piece of data that they are using incorrectly, was used out of context and told to them by someone who didn't know what they were talking about, and they will cling to it like it is made of oxygen on the moon. Like, it is just. And so I agree that everyone's entitled to their own opinion and not their own facts, as long as we can both agree that neither of us is using facts in this argument. Like, I mean, it's people argue so emotionally and they call it factually based. And usually, in my experience, they're just using more data to support their opinion, but it's just as much an opinion. What else? What other insights? That was your first thing. What other rabbit holes can we jump down?
Let me look at my notes.
I've got one.
Oh, I got one. You go first.
Okay, mine. So we have, and I mean this, the whole vaccines cause autism. Ori just jumped in. That's 100% true. You're right. Vaccines cause autism has been debunked, disproved, gutted in every possible way. But people are holding on to these single embers of something they feel is self-evident, which isn't, but and they cling to it, and they're like, hey, I don't care about this fact, I don't care about this fact. This one person, Jenny McCarthy, said this thing and she's an expert. Like,
more like Andrew Wakefield, but yeah.
What's that?
More like Andrew Wakefield, but yeah.
Well, yeah, Jenny McCarthy is the one who like blew it up and made it like a whole cultural phenomenon thing. But where I was going with this is like, and I mean this more as a joke, but not really. And that is this. From Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle, they had the system of assumptions. And then that lasted for literally over 2,000 years until we get to Insuratio Magna, written by Francis Bacon, where he develops the new system. So the Greeks invented the way of asking questions, the Socratic method, the systems for asking questions. And for over 2,000 years, they just like, you ask questions, you figure it out, you take answers that work. But 2,000 years goes by, and finally it's the 1600s, and Sir Francis Bacon decides this is what we will classify as an answer. We will not stop asking why till this happens. And here's the joke, which I mean dead seriously. I have 5 children, and all 5 of them have spent, I don't know, 1,000 hours each looking me dead in the face and asking why. How did it take 2,000 years for people to start asking questions? Was that that felt relatively innate, inherent in my children to just keep asking questions no matter how much I wanted to beat them. I don't beat my children. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just saying, how is it that children didn't ask questions? Was culturally and societally questions so bad that we had beaten that out of them early? Like, it's so strange to me. It took 2,000 years to realize to keep asking questions, because that is something we are trained and do just naturally.
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so this actually goes along perfectly with what I was going to say, which is that I find it so hilarious that when you're a kid, especially in the elementary grades, you're taught that Sir Isaac Newton discovered gravity. That before, we didn't know what gravity was. And then he saw an apple fall from a tree and he was like, oh, dang, gravity, boom. You know, like that's like this sort of like oversimplification of it that we get, right?
Right.
He did not discover gravity, and Sir Francis Bacon was not the first to have inquiry, like the thing, or even inquiry in the way that he did it. And this is something that I find so fascinating about the way that we understand history.
Sure.
We have an idea that our ancestors were ignorant, and we will use things, and I'm being very, I'm exaggerating here, but we'll say like, oh, they didn't even know what gravity was. Yeah, they did. They knew if they jumped off a cliff, they'd fall and die. They knew that what goes up must come down. They knew all of these things. They just didn't have the clever name for it that we have for it.
Now, hold on. I'm going to stop and disagree with you for a second, which I love doing, because usually I just go, if Maggie said it, it must be true. But this time you're wrong. You're absolutely right. We had the fundamental and visceral understanding that fall down, go boom, hurt, but go ouchie. We got that. And I agree that we have this very misguided view of history that our ancestors were stupid, which actually wasn't true. But I will say that Isaac Newton didn't give it a name. Isaac Newton gave it a principle. He is absolutely the first person to count how long something hit. He's absolutely like Aristotle had absolutely written extensively about gravity, and everything he said was unintelligible garbage. Lots of people had tried to define gravity before that. You're right. It's not that nobody had done it before. We didn't have names for it. We absolutely did. Lots of people had defined the force, to include Aristotle and many, many other people. And they were all batshit crazy wrong. Isaac Newton wasn't the first person to look at an apple fall and go, oh my gosh, what goes up must come down. He was the person to go, I wonder if it's always the same speed, which it's not. Like,
right. Yeah. So yes, your disclaimer is absolutely correct, but this is why I specifically talked about what we teach elementary school children, because most of us don't go in and learn more. We don't learn the
Fair.
complexities of it. We think, oh, that guy discovered gravity. Like we literally use the word like discovered gravity.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it gives like misunderstanding of, well, science for one, and history for two, and all of these other things. So we have like this idea in our head that we weren't like thinking about those things, that we didn't think about greater things. I've run into people who think truly that we think about these things because of religion, because religion is what made us not have inquiry into like the way that things worked, which is completely untrue. But this is sort of like the false premise that we're basing it on, this really rudimentary understanding of the theories and how they came about, etc. So he wasn't the first to notice. And again, I'm not saying that that's what he's, whatever for. I'm saying that this is what we're taught. Like, this is what we're taught. Absolutely. Like, so I think it's the same for the why. Like, the way that you framed the question was very basic. Like,
sure.
Weren't we asking why? Yes, the answer is yes. We were always asking why. And honestly, the proof is in the pudding. Like, we wouldn't have had the oh crap, I just drew a blank, but we wouldn't have had the advancements. There we go. The advancements in mathematics and anything in philosophy if we hadn't have always been asking that why. I think that over time things evolve. There's that buzzword.
Yep. Fun word.
Into things that we understand today. But the interesting thing is that how we understand it today is always going to be the truth, the facts. So we will base the conversation about gravity around the way that we accept gravity today via Isaac Newton.
Sure. Okay.
If that makes sense.
It certainly does. So I have a question, the follow-up, but I want to stay on Newton. So you said something there that I want to ask you to either clarify or explain, make sure that I know what you mean. So largely from a philosophical textbook standpoint, and again, I recognize that we're talking about how textbooks are wrong. From a philosophical standpoint, from the birth of Western society, Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato, through the Great Reawakening in Sorratio Magna, first for Francis Bacon, there weren't great philosophical changes. Like we had been lather, rinse, repeating and again, obviously these are oversimplifications, but I was wondering, you were talking about how we'd had all these philosophical evolutions, and I was wondering if you could point to any in particular.
Like, do you mean like sorry,
from a cataloging human thought, which is kind of what we're talking about in this context, the Aristotle and Socrates and Plato, they defined how to ask questions. Like, this is how we're asking questions. This is how we're framing thought. This is the foundations of Western society. This is how we're going to do it. And they literally codified a system of making assumptions and working off of that. That stayed in practice, was taught at Oxford and Cambridge. It was the way to answer questions until Francis Bacon. At least my research is showing. My question is can you think of any other big philosophical or social evolution points between those two that I may be skipping?
Yeah. Well, okay. First of all, real quick, I want to ask you a question.
Please.
Do you think that this sounds condescending, but I don't mean to sound condescending. Do you think that Socrates just woke up one day and light bulb went off and all of these things just fell into his lap and he came up with it out of the blue?
Well, first I'm going to answer that 3 different ways. One, I would be remiss to not point out that there's a lot of debate on whether or not Socrates was a real person. So that has to be set up front, that everything I say after this point is we're going to pretend that Socrates, like Shakespeare, was as he is presented in history and not as he may well have been, completely different. Socrates wrote down basically nothing. Plato wrote it down. So there are many people who have said that Socrates is actually just a character that is an amalgamation of several different people, kind of semi-created by Plato. I don't want to have that debate here. I just want to put that as a disclaimer up front, that saying everything we say past this may not be true because this person might not have actually existed. That having been said, no, even to quote the person Socrates, he didn't think himself as a teacher or an academic. I would say personally, I am not a philosopher nor particularly adept at philosophy. I would say that Socrates's greatest contribution wasn't anything massive. He was the toddler asking why. He was the guy that when the Senate said X, he said, okay, but why? He was the guy that wasn't afraid. And I mean, his eventual execution was for questioning the local gods. Like, I don't think Socrates did actually provide what, like Plato and Aristotle, we have tons of things that they developed. Socrates, he codified, you figure it out, and answering a question with a question, which is obnoxious, but it's a way of breaking through thought problems. Open-ended questions specifically, which I commented on one of your TikToks recently of open-ended questions. My God, it was beautiful. Just that's what. So I mean, to go back 10 minutes ago when you asked the question before I just brain dumped on you. No, I don't think Socrates woke up and provided everything, because Socrates never really did provide it. All he did was keep asking questions till you get something that makes sense.
Okay, Plato, Aristotle, none of them actually woke up and just regurgitated all of this stuff from a dream that they had. This is all an evolution of society, of culture. Wouldn't you agree?
No, it's all they all quoted other philosophers that came before them. They all were absolutely using incremental innovation, et cetera, et cetera. Yes.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What do you mean by like philosophical innovation? And the reason I ask this is because in ancient history and the way that we understand things today did not have the same terminology as it did then. Let me see if I can make this. Was it Plato or Aristotle? I can't remember which one, who was the first to be like, okay, no, who took like intellectual inquiry and said, okay, this part of intellectual inquiry is math. This part of intellectual inquiry that was Aristotle. Okay.
Aristotle is the one who defined the fields of research. Yes.
So one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that in ancient times and beyond or ever before, that philosophy and science were the same thing.
Sure.
They were intermingled. So it's really difficult to kind of separate them because we didn't have the same sort of writing systems and the same sort of differentiating that we do today. Anything that we did, anything that was a advancement from agriculture on up had some sort of philosophical, if not religious, as well as scientific, if you're following what I'm saying here.
Yes. I mean, and like I said, that is literally what Aristotle changed, is all of science, all of philosophy, all of thinking was one thing. I was a thinker. He is the one who divided it into schools of thought. Because literally before Aristotle's division of it, if you were thinking about biology, why do squirrels poop? And thinking about botany, why are some plants green and some plants orange? Both of those were categorized under philosophy. It was Aristotle that divided them out into botany, physics, metaphysics, blah, 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 math, et cetera, et cetera.
So I guess what I'm saying is, what I'm trying to point out here is that it's really hard to answer that question, because define philosophy, and are you defining philosophical advances by post-Aristotle definitions? Like, how are we defining it? You know what I mean?
Okay. No, absolutely. Okay. So my question is this. So if you subscribe to the concept, and there's some that don't, I think there's a lot of evidence to back it up. But if you, Alfred North Whitehead, and I quote this in the book as well, said, the whole of Western civilization exists as a footnotes to Plato. That everything we know, that the questions said in the dialogues of Plato over 2,000 years ago are still actively being thought about actively by the highest minds in the world today. That no one has, that the whole of Western civilization was born on the steps by these three men. I'm being overly simplistic on purpose. Mm-hmm. So in my world of bookends that I am purporting here is that, so if that was the birth of Western civilization, the next major chapter 2, was 1,400 years later in, I've suddenly forgot where Francis Bacon was from. Somewhere in Europe. What's that?
England, right?
Was it England? Well, because Instauratio Magna is, I guess, Latin. I was like, is it Italian? But yeah.
But they all always did Latin. It was always Latin. It was always, sorry, go on.
So yeah, so we're talking 1,500 years later. He's the first person to make a significant contribution to the philosophical tradition, before Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle came up with, here are the categories, here's how we'll ask questions, here's how we will develop thought. And there were no shifts. Again, Western society. I recognize that there are other people that aren't Western, there are non-Western cultures in the world. But I mean, from a Western civilization, were there any other major philosophical? Obviously, we had the rise of Christianity. That's a fairly big one. I mean, and that counts.
And Islam.
What's that? And Islam. Yeah. But neither of those, and as religions, I mean, those are both philosophical. Those are both, but from a scientific method, these are the way we ask questions. These are the way that we get answers. So yes, we can say prayer, but I'm pretty sure prayer existed before. The gods changed and the cultures of those changed. But I'm curious if there were any other major scientifically philosophic, if there's other major develops to thought and thought development that I missed in that 1,500 years.
So let me just make sure I get the parameters correct.
Sure.
You want other philosophical, like major philosophical development in scientific thought, like the way we think,
right?
Between Aristotle and Francis Bacon.
Correct. Anything
in Western civilization.
Sure. You froze with your face in a really weird position there, and I was like, great. It was fun.
Am I frozen?
You're good now.
Okay. No, but I can I talk about how like this question chaps my hide? Please
come in. The whole reason you're here is because I trust you to call me on my bullshit or point out when I'm full of shit. That's the whole point here.
This question chaps my hide because it ignores that Sir Francis Bacon, that Sir Isaac Newton, that all of them did not just drop from the heavens with these ideas. These ideas evolved over time and they picked up on them and they made them into something. Like that's what, okay. So for example, and to get kind of like, I don't know, semi-political about this,
Sure.
We wouldn't have the scientific method that we have today if we didn't have the Islamic occupation colonization of this Spanish peninsula. Like we wouldn't have like so much, like the way that things interweave is actually incredibly important. And
Absolutely.
that okay, for example, the way that we rewrite history, or rather cherry pick history, that's what sets the Edisons of the world as popular and the Teslas as a footnote. And that's a problem. Don't you agree?
I wrote an entire book about it. Yes. So I love this answer. I love it. And I didn't even set you up for it, but it was perfect, because that's a little bit my point. I agree with you that I do not think that Sir Francis Bacon had a crazy radical thought. Here's the problem. I can't prove he did, just like you can't prove he didn't, because he's the first person to write it down. I'm sure there were other people hundreds of years earlier that thought to themselves, man, the Pope's an idiot. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I am positive that there were thousands of people that saw better ways for the literal entirety of the 1500 years. I also think that they saw that Socrates was killed for asking questions and didn't ask questions. Because the reason we know evolution is real is we have a fossil record. There is no fossil record to really support the thought development that you're talking about, because as much as I agree that it's a chap hiding a statement and question, there is no fossil record of thought development from Socrates to Francis Bacon. Like, we have the way that it is done, the way that Cambridge was teaching it, the way that Oxford was teaching it, the way that everyone was teaching it. We have the systems in place, the way the Catholic Church was teaching it. We had all of the rigid systems. And I agree with you that Isaac Newton, Francis Bacon, and these people and the Royal Society didn't drop out of nowhere. But I will say that they're the first people to write it down, raise their hand, and say, "Come at me, bro."
Okay. Can I say something?
Hit me.
This is actually why I bristle at people who try to prove that Joseph Smith plagiarized the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
Because they have all of this circumstantial evidence. Look at this name of this town. Look at this evolution of this idea that ended up in the Book of Mormon. Right. This is why I have an issue with it. We don't actually have any record. We have no smoking gun that he sat down and did that.
Right.
Yet it's a belief that some people hold so strongly. By the way, not a Mormon, not trying to bash Mormons, just saying. So I find this same logic to be troublesome for two reasons.
I'm making the exact opposite argument.
Well, hold on. So one, this idea that he just plagiarized it based on circumstantial evidence, we can't apply that logic to what you're applying. But if we did apply the same logic to Joseph Smith in the writing of the Book of Mormon, then we should be celebrating Joseph Smith for coming up with such a great story.
I completely agree.
As long as it's consistent, that's all I care about.
There are millions of people that do.
Right. Yeah.
No. So I want to say both Ori and Spring Chick 19 both said things that I want to talk about. First, Ori says 2 other people came up with the theory of evolution at the same time as Darwin. He just got his papers published first. They all had tremendous beards. I wonder if that's a correlation. I think we have figured it out. I think it's a beard related issue. Spring Chick also says, but anyone could have had those ideas at the same time. Those concepts were brewing in the culture. And this is so interestingly important. We talked about it slightly last week, and I want to touch on it again here, where it's so true. Isaac Newton came up with calculus several hundred miles away simultaneously from Wilhelm Gottfried Leibniz. The two of them invented calculus at the exact same time, completely apart from each other. Whereas Newton is still to this day known as the father of calculus. What's funny is the calculus that we teach in high school is actually Leibnizian, which isn't a word, I just made it up, is the calculus of the other one. They had very different systems. It was the same concepts, but they had different kind of systems. We teach one and credit the other. Why? Because when Leibniz sued and said and appealed the Royal Society to settle who had come up with it first? Isaac Newton was the president of the Royal Society. Leibniz asked the Royal Society to settle the fight, and Isaac Newton was the president of that honestly makes Leibniz seem kind of like an idiot. Like, why would you even ask at that point?
Because he knew people like us would be having this conversation like 3 years later.
I don't necessarily think that's it, but I do believe in spontaneous thought evolution, for the record, but I also agree very much with what Springcheck is saying, is that I think that Francis Bacon got it written down first. I think that a lot of people, it's interesting because, like you said, it's all these thought developments happen from disparate places and they all develop and they converge on single points. And I think they occur to a lot of people all at the same time. Excuse me. Wow.
Well, what we really have to ask, though, is the important question, who came up with it, or is the important question, why do we elevate certain people who came up with it over others? So in Isaac Newton's, and I want to say Leibowitz, in Isaac Newton, yeah, that guy's case, I think that it's kind of obvious that it's not just the royal whatever. It's also that as a society, as an American society, as the West, we favor the Brits. And we're going to go with the British idea because they were, sun never set. But also when it comes to Edison versus Tesla,
yeah,
it comes to Edison versus others, when it comes to a lot of different discoveries that happened around the same time, we will always favor the superhero that we want to push out there. And he's usually male and he's usually white and preferably from England.
Yeah. No, he's yep. And I will actually say, so the original, the cover of my book, and this is going to feel like, I swear this is connected. The cover of my book has a mousetrap on it and a big red stamp, and that's it. The original cover of my book had a Banksy style spray painted wall with a spray painted Tesla on it, not the car, the person. Like it was Nikola Tesla Banksy styled on a brick wall. And it was supposed, because it was all about nonconformity and crazy and innovation. And I when I sent it out to several dozen beta testers to, here are the different ideas. What do you think? What do you think of this one? What do you think? And I had come up with this book cover that I loved, and I showed it, and I had a lot of people like, oh yeah, I love it, it's great, it's wonderful. And two separate PhD wielding badass women that are in my life that I love dearly, both of them independently of each other, came to me and said, I wouldn't read that book based on the cover. And I said, why? And they said, I have absolutely no interest in reading another book about innovation with a dead white man on the cover. And I'm like, huh. Weird things I wouldn't have thought of. Like I thought of Tesla as just this pinnacle of like craziness. I mean, he was in love with a pigeon, but that's not the message it was sending to other people. Is like you said, we pick these heroes, and they are white men in history and we tend to ignore the others. And I will say that I got through to the end of the book, and because I was saying very top level of innovation, I didn't go down deep enough and include many people that weren't that. And I'm a little bit bummed by that now, but it wasn't something that was pointed out to me till the book was done. And I wasn't excluding anyone. I was literally attempting to try to pick the top level obvious cornerstones, and the cornerstones are all what you just said. They're the ones that are talked about.
And you're not going to fix that with your book.
No, I wasn't trying to. It's not.
So I mean, it's not like, I mean, I'm sure people will come at you, but it's really like, okay, well, what do you want? What do you want to do? But right. So, I guess my bigger thing with this is that we will talk about how we stand on the shoulder of giants. Absolutely. But when it comes to men like these men, it's always that, oh, look at how great they were, such great innovators. And we don't actually have respect for the giants that they stood on.
And well, I don't disagree with that. What I think is the most troubling, and this is actually what we get into in either the next chapter or 2 chapters from now, I don't know. So we'll talk about it in a week or two, is that it's not just that we don't respect these giants they stood on. It's often we give them credit for things they didn't do and completely disregard the thing that they did. Like Edison was an asshole that didn't do a single thing he was given credit for. And the sad part about that isn't that he was given credit that he didn't deserve. It's that what that does is completely mask what he actually did. Like the unbelievable infrastructural change to our lives and America and society and who we are. Edison changed a lot of that. He didn't do any of it by inventing a damn thing. He invented infrastructure. Same thing with Ford. Ford did not invent the motor car. He did not invent the production line. Look it up. It had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Nothing. Yeah. But what he did is he invented the Ford F-150. Like,
but both of those people were really great at selling it, just like Steve Jobs.
Absolutely.
They weren't inventors. They were the mouthpiece. They were the salesmen. They were the CEOs. And this idea that, like, I don't know, like the buck stops here and it goes both ways. And I think we forget that. He put his name on it. Steve Jobs put his name on it.
Right.
Ford put his name on it. So, of course, the assembly line will always be Ford because he rubber stamped it, whatever, you know.
Right. No, and it's an interesting dichotomy of why we favor credit over contribution. So it doesn't count unless you were first. It doesn't count unless it was yours. It doesn't count unless it was your name on it. We not only disregard the shoulders of who they were standing on, we also often ignore what they actually did to the thing that they can get credit for. We completely disregard contribution so that we can talk about credit.
Well, it's almost as if you're saying, Kirk, that we value mythology.
Oh, no. Yes, Rob, absolutely. Henry Ford was also an absolute anti-Semite piece of jackass.
If I had a nickel for every time this man had to bring up that Ford was a Nazi.
For those who don't know, that's her husband.
Every damn time. He did a 3-minute presentation for a DTL, which is Drink, Talk, Learn.
Yeah.
A game that we play with our friends.
Sure.
He did a 3-minute presentation about how Ford was a Nazi and went over by like 7 minutes.
Sorry, I find that funny. That's
my marriage.
No, and so Hugh J just said something that I really like. Branding is better than history. It's so true. And this is what I do. And one of the reasons that I wrote the book, and one of the things that I talk about though, is that I'm into cognitive communication, and it's so true. It's that it doesn't matter if it's true. It doesn't matter if it's a fact. It doesn't matter if it's relevant. It doesn't matter if it's important. It only matters if we can remember and apply it. And we are story-driven people. Trying to explain the abstract concept of what Steve Jobs, Edison, and Ford did is remarkably difficult. But if you go, hey, iPod, cool. Like that it's tactile, it's tangible, it's visual. It's so easy to say, I have to codify this. It doesn't matter if we can't apply it. And so we give them credit for things that helps us apply it.
So yeah,
it was 18 minutes. It was 18 minutes actually.
Yeah, now I'm remembering flashbacks.
I like you, Rob.
So the thing is that really the branding is greater than history. Yeah, I mean, this is what I was meaning when I said we value mythology, we value legend. We have to turn everything into a mythology. Like honestly, history is mythology.
Absolutely.
I said, and historians are storytellers. It is what it is, because that's really what sticks with us is those larger than life stories, or those big things that like change the world. It's very Joseph Campbell, right? Campbell.
I don't know.
Joseph Campbell. Help me out here, guys. Joseph Campbell.
What did he do? Who's this?
Joseph Campbell, you know, the hero's journey. The Joseph Campbell. He talked about myth a lot. Am I right that it's Joseph Campbell?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay. Because I could remember Jung, like Jungian philosophy, Jung, but I was like, am I sure it's Joseph Campbell? Yes, it is Joseph Campbell. I just Googled as well.
Yep.
The power of
fascinating stuff. So I'm kind of parsing all that out in my head. It's interesting that from a cognition standpoint, it seemed one of the reasons that I think that we do this, or one of the things that I think that one of the biggest downfalls of the fact that we do this is that we instantly try to add distance. We try to add space between what others have accomplished and our capabilities. Oh, he did something I'd never be able to. He was so much better than me. He was so much this. She was so much that. They were so much this. And we add distance between their accomplishments and our capabilities as to forgive ourselves for not accomplishing that thing. And what's really important is that A, they didn't accomplish that thing. The thing you think they didn't do. And second, the thing they actually did, they did with a team almost every time. And third, and most importantly, the one thing they all did, the only thing they did that people actually are, the cost of admission is you have to be willing to be wrong. You have to be willing to be ripped apart in the town square. You have to be willing to be just eviscerated publicly. And these men all were that. Every innovator was willing to die on the hill. That's the only difference.
I have a story that goes with this.
Hit me.
I know you're being super serious, but I have a story kind of funny. Maybe I will only find it funny and my husband will find it funny because he was there. Okay. But there when in the church I used to, there used to be always talk of the prophets, how great the prophets were, the prophets. They're men of God, blah, blah, blah. And whenever this talk would come up, when there was a lull in the teacher presenting this, I would always yell, usually from the back, Noah was a drunk. As a reminder.
Did you say Noah was a drunk or no, he was a drunk?
Noah was a drunk.
Okay.
Like I would always yell that as a reminder that the prophets are human beings and fallible men. Like it was like my thing. There was a pair of missionaries who knew me as the Noah was a drunk. Rob can attest to this. So
we need to get you a t-shirt. That needs to happen.
I would literally, it's almost like the gif of or gif of
it's a gif. On this show it is gif. I don't care. It's a gif.
Thank you. I agree. Of Meryl Streep when she's yelling. That was like me every time. And like Gospel Doctrine, Gospel Principles, Relief Society. Noah was a drunk. Like at all times. Just to remind them about the fallibility of the prophets.
No, and I remember, so I saw, like everyone else, I went and I have watched and listened to Hamilton a quadrillion times. And I think you and I talked about this a few weeks ago. And I decided that I was going to go read the Rob Chernow, and it's like this big, and like it's bigger than my first apartment. And the thing that I read that blew me away was just how utterly human these men were. Like utterly just stupid, petty, low, just utterly human, especially Thomas Jefferson. There we did.
Yeah.
We made it.
We did it. Full circle. We did it, Kirk.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Like we talk about George Washington being this just very normal and unimpressive individual and would have lost every battle. Like the only battle he won that mattered, they knew he was coming. They just didn't think he was actually going to do it. Like the only thing he did impressive was be stupid enough to they don't think I'm stupid enough to do this. They don't know how stupid I am. That's his contribution. Like he was a very, very lackluster general. He was really good at spying and stuff, but like Alexander Hamilton, it wasn't that he was really good at writing. It's that he never stopped writing. It was accuracy by volume. He just wrote so damn much. Like, these men were just people and just super flawed people. But we try to add distance between where we are and where they are to try to like make it okay that we're not doing good things. And really the only thing that they did that we're not is putting themselves in front of the firing squad. This
is why you never meet your heroes.
Oh, it's so true. So true. I have stories. But my heroes are still alive and they would remember those stories too. So I don't want to cause that kind of drama. But yes. So what do we do? So, I mean, I kind of end the chapter with like, atom bomb accuracy. I like that, Hugh J. Yeah. Like we're just gonna, shooting accuracy by volume. We're just gonna throw out as much as possible. Something will stick. So what's the next step in thought development? Is if everyone, if I'm understanding your point, if all of these ideas are just rehashings of old ideas, which I agree, and they are just the culmination of social structures and things we've been taught, and it's all coming together, and other people are doing it too, which I agree. So do we just let other people do it? Do we get out in front of it? What's the answer from a Maggie perspective in moving forward?
Whatever floats your boat.
That's a non-answer, and you know it.
Well, I can't sit here and be like, we have to do this, we have to do that. Like,
sure you can. That's literally
honestly, there's so many.
Soliloquize, like, Margaret.
There's so many different factors that go into like what is next. Do you want to know what I think is next?
I disagree with that, by the way.
Do you want to know what I think is next on a grand human scale?
Sure.
Reversion.
Well, absolutely. But that's also really easy to say because it's only what's happened every other time. Like we I bet we're headed towards a collapse based on, every other time in history that's happened. Yeah, I'm with you.
But I don't think that most people understand that reversion is even possible. I think that they don't
understand.
Right. That I don't think that they understand that all of the progress that we make always goes right back.
I just became really, really good friends because he just quoted everything as a remix.
Just honestly, that every progress that we're making is just based on the progress that we've already made and that we're just going back and doing again. And yes, we build on it every single time, but there's so much in our current society that we think is new that is not new.
That is not new.
Not new at all. Like things that we think, oh, the sexual revolution, not new.
Not new. Actually, what's really funny is, so now this was, I read this report in the early 2000s, like 2003, 2004, and it was like, what was, again, the thing that I'm quoting is 20 years old. So take that exactly into account. But in like 2004, 2005, over the last 2 centuries, 1800s and 1900s, what decade was the most liberal by means of sexual liberation, STDs?
Idiocracy.
What's that?
I said idiocracy. I was talking to you. Go on.
Right. So what decade over 200 years, 1800s and 1900s, what decade was the most liberal by liberal? I don't mean political. I mean alcohol consumption, sexual revolution, non-monogamy, like the most debaucherous decade. Ooh, I like that. Good alliteration. The most debaucherous decade of the 1800s and 1900s. And it's not, it really surprised me. It's the gin joint 30s. Was the actual the chlamydia, there was more STDs, more consumption. There was so that, not the free love of the 70s, not the craziness of the AIDS in the 80s, like the gin joint, it might have been the 20s, I can't remember, but it was the flapper girl era.
20s.
Was it the 20? The flapper girl era was the single most debaucherous in North American Western philosophy history.
Yeah, and if you think that's bad, I raise you ancient Greece. Like it just, like there's so many, like this is not, like this is all just
Yeah.
like a rehashing of the same old different crap.
No,
Honestly, you want to know something that I truly believe
what's
that
that?
people are absolutely not going to like,
What's that?
just based on human history, that will return to our archaic gendered way of thinking.
I think I missed a part of that sentence. You're saying that we will go back to a gendered way of thinking?
Our archaic gendered way of thinking. Gender roles will come back with a vengeance.
I agree. I don't agree they should. I don't agree. I am very happy with the progression that we are at. I think that we are facing a pretty radical pendulum swing in the next couple decades.
We're already actually seeing it happen. We're
Yeah.
just not seeing it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the roaring 20s. Thank you. Everyone's saying the 20s. I don't know where I thought 30s. Yeah, but it's absolutely the roaring 20s, not the 30s.
Yeah, nothing great happened in the 30s. I mean,
the Depression. No, the Depression was the 30s. No, the gin joint 20s, the roaring 20s, the flappers, the zoot suiters,
So I'm not sure, Ari, I'm not sure, Ori, I'm not sure the actual like stats on that, but I don't doubt something like that because we do not use our brains like our ancestors did at all. Like all of our thinking is done for us.
Well, not just that, our attention span is actually measurably shorter, just in the last 20 years. And also, really fascinatingly, I talked to some neurologists and did a couple of interviews on this exact subject. I didn't see that statistic that we are losing actual IQ points, but this is sample size of 1. I can still tell you to this moment probably 12 phone numbers from high school that no longer work. They're landlines that are done. I can't tell you anyone's phone number other than my business partner, my wife, and my father, not my mother. Those 3 phone numbers are the 3 that I have in my head. Other than that, everyone I knew in high school. But we don't have to memorize things anymore. And memory is a muscle. Memory is something that we absolutely develop. And
I'm curious to see about the rise in dementia and Alzheimer's.
That'll be interesting. Yeah.
Because your brain, I used to work for a neurologist. Your brain is, not medically like typing his notes, but like your brain is a muscle that you have to work. And one of the first things that he has older patients and younger patients who are getting into memory loss and dementia and everything is to work out their brain. He suggests learning a new language. He suggests learning a new instrument. He suggests playing freaking Sudoku, whatever. Like he suggests all of these things that are incredibly important.
Absolutely.
Get our brain working.
Yeah, we've got to exercise our brain because right now we just don't use it anymore. Like we are not required to. We have so much power that allows us to bypass having to think things through that we're not exercising that cognitive muscle. And again, we're seeing we get to conclusions faster, not necessarily in a good way. We don't think things through as much in any way, and our attention span is demonstratively slower over the last 100 years. And Ori then sorry, I just saw 1UP's comment. I think it was people born each decade have 3 IQ points as opposed minus 3 IQ points as opposed to already living people slowly deteriorating. I'll try and find the source. I assume that meant source and not sauce, but maybe.
Speaking of IQ points.
Absolutely. I will say that Mike Judge's, you guys mentioned Idiocracy, whether you're talking about the movie or in general, the Mike Judge Idiocracy, it was a very okay movie, but I will say that it never before has a movie that was meant to be so moronic proven to turn into like a documentary way faster than I think it was meant to. Like the reality show president and it got scary accurate really, really fast. It got uncomfortable. It's a good movie though. I appreciate it. So you were saying the things that, and you said I kind of interjected I disagreed, and that it's that in the world of hold on, mostly commonly used in cropped porn means that's true. we only can control so much. Now, we obviously, people can strive to change the world, and people can strive to change the government. People can strive, and I am by no means attempting to limit anyone on that. I'm actually the exact opposite. I'm trying to say that anything is possible, but one thing is necessary. Period. 100% of the time. And I don't get to, we'll get more into it into the much later of the book. That too is it's that the distance between you and anything you want is closed by motion. Nothing changes while standing still. Period. Nothing changes while complaining about the thing that is wrong. Nothing, ever. Not in history has anything ever changed because you bitched about it. It's never been done. The distance, the only thing separating, that's what it is. The only thing separating you from the thing you want, whether it's a toppled government or a new sports car, the only thing separating you from the thing you want is distance. So close the gap. Do something. And the cool thing that Socrates did, Aristotle, Plato, Francis Bacon, Leibniz, Newton, Tesla, all of these people, the one thing they had in common is that they were not afraid of closing the distance and being wrong, or in Edison's case, murdering someone. But like it's, if you close the distance, you have to be willing to look stupid. And if that means writing 1 million words on alchemy, despite that even your contemporaries are calling you crazy, was he wrong? Yes. Newton was wrong, and that is good news. And Hawking was wrong. That is good news. Einstein was wrong. That was good news. These men have had holes poked in their theories. Their things have been attacked. They have been reviewed and torn apart. And that's good, because it shows that the only thing that they needed to do was keep going. And the people that don't accomplish what they're going for is the people that get that stop. The people that stop trying. Okay, for the record, I do want to I want to honor what 1UP14 just said. He is correct. In the history of mankind, bitching has changed exactly one thing, and that is the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Because lots of people bitched about that, and they did something. So, yeah, that one might be the exception that proves the rule. Hey, Calvin, what's going on? So my point in all of that is just to say is that the one thing that everyone who's changed history, the one thing they had in common was the willingness to look stupid.
I think they had some other things in common.
Like what?
Skin color, a penis, and usually some sort of affluence.
So no, first off, you're wrong on the last one. So here's the problem. You just did what I just said. You added things that you couldn't fix to dismiss your ability to fix it, which is frankly absolute bullshit.
Well, I'm adding that for me because the thing is that if you're saying that, because I don't want to change the world like Isaac Newton, or like I just don't want to. But the thing is that we can't limit it to just being this simple thing that they did, that this thing that they had in common. We have to understand too that they had a lot more than that in common.
I disagree, because I can do this with every woman who's changed history as well.
Yes, but how many have you placed in your book along with these men?
No. So first off, I'm the one who just told you that like you can't turn that around me in 2 minutes. That's my whole point. This wasn't ever meant to be about feminism. This was meant to be about innovation.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that there's always a little bit more to it. There's more to what we can accomplish than simply putting our minds to it and having forward momentum.
I could not disagree with you more. You couldn't be more wrong. I'm so happy right now.
Tell me why.
I just did. All you're doing right now is coming up with reasons you can't, that are based on nothing but your perception and unwillingness to put yourself out there. Period. Okay.
Wait, are you saying that
they were white, rich, and penised? Period. Which isn't true.
Penis is a great word. But wait, are you saying this about, when you're saying you, are you saying you generally, or are you meaning me?
I'm saying you generally.
Okay, because I don't give a shit. Okay, yeah, all right.
Everyone, you specifically are saying there's more to it than they were willing to do this. They were X, Y, and Z. That's not true. There are many people I used the top level people on purpose because they are the most readily accessible. And yes, those are the people that are branded through history. And those are the ones that are white male and penist, which, by the way, my new favorite word.
Yeah, that is an amazing word. Thank you.
Penist is a word forever now. But if I were to turn this and make it a book about feminism instead of innovation, every suffragette, every badass female queen, the exact same principles to the letter, the exact same principles apply. The reason they are the women we can name is they were the ones who did not care about what society said about them. 100% of the principles that I lay out are the exact same. I chose poorly.
No, I'm not actually saying that because you're not wrong here. We don't have a lot of female innovators, period, throughout history. We don't have a lot. And Camille Paglia, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, she actually has a really great saying, which I'm going to murder right now, which is we don't have any female Mozarts for the same reason we don't have any female Jack the Rippers. Like, her argument is that women...
That second part's not even true, though.
What?
Said that second part's not even true, though.
That we don't have female Jack the Rippers?
Some of the most terrifying serial killers in history were women.
But they didn't have the art form that Jack the Ripper did.
I disagree with... No, let me find her name. No, like the most... Oh gosh, what's her name? I just watched a documentary on her too. She was worse than H.H. Holmes and Jack the Ripper combined.
Are you talking about the one who lived in like Minnesota?
No, she was in England.
Who did Children, the one who had like a scheme with like an orphanage.
No, that's not it either. Hold on. This is going to bother me. I literally just watched. This is going to bother me if I don't find it.
What's the time period?
Before Jack the Ripper, 16, 7. She would take like ladies in waiting and other lower nobles and bring them in and torture them and what's that?
Elizabeth Bathory?
Yes. Her.
Most of her reality is myth, and she wasn't British. She was actually like the cousin of Vlad the Impaler. And most of what we understand about her is that she would bathe in their blood to stay young, and that she was basically tried for the murders of like several different, young women or whatever. But none of them had the art form that Jack the Ripper did. And yes, I'm saying art form, but it's true. Like, you cannot find a female serial killer that did what Jack the Ripper did, and you cannot find a female Mozart.
No, I think there's still a lot of confirmation bias in your second one, but I will give you that I am not by any means attempting to say that history has been nice to women.
No, that's not what I'm trying to say either. I'm trying to say that innovation and being remembered as an innovator and being taken seriously as an innovator is more than just being willing to put yourself out there, because there's so many more things,
I love it. I just found the disconnect. I don't give one rat's ass about credit. You're making it about credit. I don't give up. I make no attempt.
Well, then I guess then you have to. If a tree falls,
we conflate so poorly contribution and credit. I don't give a damn what people give you credit for at all. That's not what I'm attempting to say. I actually
really like what Hugh just said. Actually, I'd like to make the distinction between history and historical documentation. The people that make change and stay remembered are white, male, and penist, not to say that they're the only changers. Exactly.
That is exactly my point. That is exactly, again, I love this word penist that we've discovered. Anyway, I will say that you're absolutely right. You have to be white, male, penist, and rich to be remembered. I don't care.
Yeah. Also, my husband brings it. How did women's suffrage succeed? White male penises allowed it. And who were the suffragettes? Affluent white women. The brown women had to stay and take care of the rich white women's kids in houses so they can enjoy their liberation.
No, and again, I am absolutely nothing. This is, and I actually I think it's like 2 chapters from now where we talk about the difference between the conflation between credit and contribution. You are absolutely correct, but you said it. You're really well there. We don't have these women. You're right. They aren't remembered. I'm not saying about how to go down in history. I'm saying how to make a difference, and the two are not the same. They're almost.
Thing about that though is that what I find interesting about that though is that it's a very like, and I'm not trying to attack you, but it's a very like white guy thing to say. There's like, you don't need credit. Now, I mean, especially now, a lot of women and people of color have been talking about how we haven't gotten credit all these freaking centuries. Let's get credit. So now the focus is credit. You know what I mean?
No. And I think I agree with you that it is really, really jacked up. Like, I mean, to use one that is just top of mind in the very famous promontory point with the East and Western Railroad, and the very famous Golden Spike picture of the completion of the railroad. There's not a single Asian person in that picture when they're the ones who built the railroad. Like, I absolutely agree that giving credit where credit is due is important. My point remains, though, that getting credit and accomplishing something are absolutely unrelated goals.
True. I'm sorry, go on.
If you want to change the world, awesome. There is a way to do that. If you want to go down in history for having changed the world, it is an entirely different recipe. The two are unrelated. It's like the Big Mac you order and the Big Mac you see on the picture. They don't look the same. And we have to...
I'm sorry, I was just reading what my husband said.
I'm putting that up on the screen. So Kirk doesn't have a chapter entitled White Male Penis. I'm going to be extremely disappointed just for you, Rob. That's going to have to happen.
We'll put together and we'll call it White Male and Penis.
White Male and Penis. I'm down. I'm about it. My point is not in any way to belittle the lack of credit given to people that deserve it. And my point is by no means to, and again, I'm not unaware of my privilege being a cishet white male of semi-significant means. My point is that just from a cognition and innovation standpoint, people let everything you just said, the reality of it, stop them from doing anything. And that's the problem. Because the distance between what you want and where you, the only thing separating you from the thing you want is distance. And you're never going to close the gap pointing at all the problems. You're going to close the gap by moving. Credit is secondary. We can worry about credit after we've done something worth getting credit for. But if credit comes first, then nothing gets done.
I don't disagree with you. I really don't. But I also hear where that's incredibly white man to say. Sure. Like I you know me, I'm like right in the middle. Like I'm like, yeah, you're right, but also this. And also it's important to note that not wanting to save the world, not wanting to have credit, or not wanting to have influence or whatever is actually more normal than wanting to change the world is.
Absolutely. But that's not who the book was written to.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm putting this out there because there is this idea with like self-help books and bright citing, not saying yours is like a self-help book, but like the bright citing, the Rachel Hollises of the world, where it's like everyone needs to get out there and be a whatever. And there's a lot of pushback against it from BIPOC, from especially the ableism in it. Not everyone wants to lean in. Not everyone wants to do that. And that's fine, but this book isn't for you. This podcast probably isn't for you, right. Which is hilarious because I'm one of the people who just kind of doesn't want to. Like, I just don't care.
You know, what's funny is that you're wrong. I know you exactly well enough. Rob, back me up here. I love you, Maggie. You're full of shit.
I don't want. I honestly
cannot avoid a fight to save your life. You will die in traffic.
Yeah.
People that don't want to fight, stay away from the fight. I have never seen you walk away from a fight. Don't say you don't want to change. People who don't want to change shit, let shit go. Love you.
I mean, I guess you could be, I guess the way that I'm thinking about it is like have some sort of like philosophical, or be like, oh, you know, Maggie Babylon, PhD, has something to say about this, you know, like I don't.
You want to be riding the damn it. That was going to be such a cool reference if I'd ever read a single Tolkien book. What are the damn eagles called?
The Eagles are the Eagles.
They're just big eagles? I thought they had a cooler name than that.
Yeah, they don't have a cool name.
Is it Gondor? Where they fly out? Whatever. You want to be flying the giant eagle. Like, you want to be leading. You want to be, maybe not leading the charge, but you absolutely want to be a part of the wave of change. And to say anything else would be moronic. You absolutely want to ride and be a part of the wave of change, which means this is absolutely talking about you.
I'll have to ponder this. Like, honestly, I will, because sometimes I don't realize what I want until someone tells me, which sounds really weird, but what?
I said, hey, Rob, back me up. He knows you clearly better than me.
Yes.
No, and that's the whole point. That's exactly my point. I'm not saying that Maggie fights just to fight. Well, I mean, yes, I did, but I also maintain that. But that's my point, is that she's saying that she doesn't want to, like, that she's not trying to change the world. And that's just not true. She fights the fights that you absolutely fight with a mama bear passion of like craziness towards the fights you find worth it. That's called wanting to change the world, by the way. That's what that looks like.
Okay, I'm going to say something.
Yeah.
Perhaps I don't see it in the same way, because as a woman, I was raised with the belief that these fights are small and inconsequential and unimportant.
I would disagree. I'm sorry. I hear that. I understand that's the truth. No, I think these are the fights that matter. I think these are the ones. This is where real change happens. I really believe that, by the way. And I will maintain, again, third time. And again, the whole point of my book, and the reason I wanted you to go chapter by chapter with you, is I really am not standing on some kind of intellectual high ground of I am right. I actually genuinely think that I'm wrong a lot through this book. And that's what I want to dig into. But on this one, yes, it is unfortunate that I happen to be cis, het, white, and male on this one, because I dug deep, and I didn't only talk to men, and I didn't only talk to the white guys. And the one thing that changes things is people willing to put their name next to their opinion and push through a door, no matter how stupid they looked. That's what changed things.
And that's actually what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm not trying to cut you for that, but that's actually what I was trying to say with the Camille Paglia quote, because her argument is that innately that men and women are different, and that men are more inclined to take those risks, which is why don't see it. And her argument, and again, I'm probably failing at this, and if I can find it, I'll send it to you because it's amazing. Her argument is that the reason why I lost it.
You're saying that men are more, I mean, and again, this is a question. She's purporting that women are more risk averse than men.
Yes, because of what we talked about in chapter 1, or the beginning, about herds, about how humans are herds, and of all of the humans being like in their herd mentality and wanting to be a part of the group and needing to be a part of the group, women are at the higher level of that. Some people argue because we are the physically weaker sex, we need to herd together more, and that men have the privilege innately of being able to be out on their own, and so they can be more risk taking, whereas women are going to be more risk averse because they're afraid of being pushed out of their protective circle that is the herd.
I would absolutely, that I can absolutely agree to, there's some obvious inherent logic there that no, I mean, the herd mentality is it's a problem. And that's kind of the other side of this, is that we have to be willing to lose the safety of the herd. And there are many people that don't want to. there are many people that are perfectly happy with the safety of the herd, but there are a lot of people, and that's who the book is for, that feel truly suffocated and strangled and hidden and lost in the herd and have no idea how to get out. And I understand that it does sound oversimplified, but the answer is be willing to look stupid. That's step one. There are more steps after that, but step one is you have to be willing to let the herd turn on you.
Yeah, which I find really interesting because totally don't have a problem with that, but also don't want to,
I was waiting for there to be more to that sentence. Absolutely. I'm the biggest hypocrite ever because I'm the guy who has spent his entire life masking as to fit in. This book was written for me, to me, as much as it was written anything else, because I'd spent 37 years desperately trying to disappear into the group and have been completely incapable of doing so until I realized that was not my biggest liability, but my greatest strength, is that I can't disappear into the group is the one thing I have going for me, not the one thing I have going against me.
And it's interesting because I'm trying to be okay with that, but my process has been really different. And I do wonder if it has to do with male versus female.
Wait, say that again.
I've done the same thing where I hated that I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I hated that I couldn't just conform. I hated that my masking wasn't good enough, but my process of coming to terms with that and being okay with it. And I'm still not at the point where I think it's a strength. And I wonder if that's,
and I don't know. That's a solid, I'm going to think about that this week. I'm probably going to ask more people because I wouldn't be able to answer that question on my own. But this
gets into scary territory.
It is, and that's
whether or not gender is innate, and whether or not we have gendered brains, and all of these other things.
No, I love it. This is our 90 minutes, and I don't want to and on that note, bye. But I don't want to have these conversations go forever and ever and have people let's pick this up in next week when we go to chapter 4, which goes further into credit, and it is actually very much a continuation of this conversation. And I'm going to do some research because I love this conversation. I think that it's important. I think that it's good to unpack, and there are good questions being asked and answered. I certainly, again, there's a lot that I'm learning even more after the book, and that's kind of the point.
So was having me as your co-host the very best bad idea you've ever had, or?
No, writing the book is still the very best bad idea I've ever had. But no, I maintain that I couldn't have done this without someone that is all the things you are. If it couldn't be someone that was going to agree with me, / it couldn't be with someone who was just going to disagree just to disagree. I maintain you were still very much the right choice here. You'll call me on my shit when there is some, and I'm not afraid to call you out either. I'm not afraid of stepping on your toes, nor vice versa. And there are other people I'd be like, no, I'm not going to correct them because that'll look bad. No, I think we're good sparring partners, frankly.
I think we need to cue the Ebony and Ivory song.
Nice. Awesome. Well, guys, this has been episode 4, I believe, because we did the first. But we will be back next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern and 6 p.m. Pacific for the next chapter. If you are interested, Very Best Bad Idea, pick it up on my website, verybestbadidea.com. There is an audiobook available. Hit me up for it. I have to send you the file. Amazon is dragging its feet about making it available. It is turned in. It's in their hands now, and it was supposed to come out Friday and hasn't yet. But the audiobook does exist. If you want to purchase that from me, I can provide that file as well. But so hit me up. Thank you guys, and we will all see you next week. Bye-bye.